Hello and welcome to Real Musicians Don't Starve. My name is Michael Elsner, and today I am here with one of my absolute favorite people of all time, by far my favorite drummer, Mr. Jeff Bowders. And Jeff has had a very long, fantastic career. He's a drummer. He runs his own Drum Discipline Academy, which I'm going to have him tell you about a little later. He's played with so many different artists, and he's also an author, published author with Hal Leonard. So you can go into your local music store and buy one of a variety of different drumming books that he's authored. But as far as the artists that he's played with, he's played guitar and recorded with. He's played and recorded with a guitarist named Paul Gilbert. If you're a guitar player, you're going to know some of these people. He's played with Joe Satriani. He's played with Richie Kotzen and John Five. He's also recorded with the band Puddle of Mud, Pat Travers, and he's also played with a huge star, Shakira. And this is a very small list of people that he's worked with, but it's a pretty wide range of musical styles as well. He's written 3 books for Hal Leonard. They're really 3 essential drum books for drummers. The first is Essential Double Bass Drumming Techniques. The second is Essential Rock Drumming Concepts. And the third is Essential Drum Set Fills. And he has also done a DVD for Hal Leonard as well, an instructional DVD. So he's really covered quite a lot as a musician. And Jeff, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. You recently shared a story that I'd actually love for you to share with everyone, and it was about how when Hal Leonard first asked you to record a DVD for them, how you actually didn't feel that you were ready for it yet, but then you got some great advice from another individual who encouraged you to do that, and that was a very successful DVD and opened a lot of other opportunities for you down the road. So welcome, and I'm happy to have you here with us.
Michael Elsner, thank you so much for having me on this. It's an honor. I think this podcast that you're doing is phenomenal. The title is excellent. Real Musicians Don't Starve. It's so disappointing when I think so many musicians feel like they have to starve to feel like they're an authentic artist or something that gives them some sort of credibility if they're starving. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And so thank you for doing this, and hopefully I can contribute and change the way of thinking for those artists that think that way, at least. But anyway, that's I would love to share that story with you. But even to give you a little bit more of a backstory that preceded that, it might even be a little bit more beneficial to kind of get the context of my relationship with Hal Leonard before that. As you said, when we first met, I was working on my first book that would eventually be published by Hal Leonard. It was called Just Double Bass Drumming. But I did that independently. I did that without any sort of advance from a publisher. So it was all my own. But then eventually Hal Leonard got wind of it, and they wanted me to submit it for review, something that they may want to publish. At the time I was living in Nashville, I was actually renting a room from in this house with the guy that owned the house was this guy named George. He worked for Word Records. He was basically a sales rep for the record label. And so he's basically a salesman, really good guy. And so once I submitted this independent copy to Hal Leonard, it took them like a few months to actually respond and get back to me. And I didn't really know the progress. And I think I emailed them once, and it was kind of like, yeah, it's still under review. But, I kind of got the feeling that it was like, don't bother us kind of a thing. But anyway, one night, George asked me about how the progress is coming, if they were actually going to publish it or not. And I said, I don't know. I still haven't heard back from them. And, he said, well, have you reached out? I said, oh, I did once, but I just didn't want to bother them. But, so I'm just going to wait. And he goes, well, Jeff, you just have to go for the no. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yeah, just go for the no. And I said, what does that even mean? I've never heard of that. And he said, we use this in sales all the time. He said, time is so precious that we don't have the luxury to waste it on somebody's indecisiveness. And so if somebody's waiting and just kind of hemming and hawing about whether or not they should buy the product, he goes, we just kind of push them to the point that if they say no, that gives us a green light to move on to someone else, right? And somebody that could actually benefit from our time and energy. And he goes, so if Hal Leonard is like not on the fence about it, if they're on the fence about it, you should just push them and just say, hey, I have other publishers, and that may kind of spark a fire underneath them to actually start making a decision. And he goes, so just go for the no. And I thought that mindset was so foreign to me, but it makes so much sense. And I was like, and I think that's applicable to so many different things. I think as artists too, where we sometimes with our art, we think it's so fragile that if somebody rejects it, that it's not going to have any value just because one person rejects it. It's because it doesn't have value anymore. I think that's total nonsense. And so the thing is, we're always going to find an audience. We're always going to find somebody that really appreciates what it is we do. And it's our job to kind of filter that out. And I think going for the no is actually a really effective kind of mindset and philosophy to actually embrace. So you don't have to waste the time on people that, aren't as passionate about what you create as you are, or other people
Right.
maybe. Right?
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
Yeah. I just think that's super. It's a mindset that I think it's kind of scary to take at first, because we've been so conditioned to be people pleasers and we want to make sure everyone likes our stuff and everything. It's like, no, not everyone is going to like what we create. And it's our job to filter that out. And I think going for the no is a really effective way to do that. So to wrap up the story, I actually sent Hal Leonard an email the next day, and I was like, hey, if you guys can't make a decision within a week, I'm gonna submit this to other publishers that are interested. And lo and behold, the very next day, I got a response, and they said, we're gonna publish it, and we're gonna send over the contracts this week. Boom.
That's awesome.
So I was like,
Yeah.
Well,
There's a story that as you're sharing that, I'm remembering. I worked with an artist for a while, and he was sharing how his roommate, who's currently or his former roommate, who's actually currently a signed country artist and has a pretty big following, how they went to one record label. It was the artist and his manager, and they went to have a meeting at the record label, and something was said during the meeting. We'll say they were there at like 1:00 in the afternoon. I don't know all the specific details. I don't remember what they were, but we'll say that like they had a meeting at 1:00, and they went in and they sat down, and the A&R guy first started saying something along the lines of, we're still trying to really figure out where we can fit him in, and if this is going to be a good match. He was doing the hemming and hawing thing, and this guy's manager, who was sitting next to him, said, well, that's okay. Look, since we agreed to come and meet with you at 1:00, we wanted to fulfill our obligation. But at 1:45 or 2:00 or whatever the time was, we're going to whatever the record label was right down the street, because we're signing with them. But we wanted to come in and we wanted to, just follow through on our meeting, and whatnot.
Wow.
Now, the second half of the story wasn't true. There was no record deal waiting for him right down the street. So they got up and they left, and they didn't even get out of the record, out of the building before they were stopped, brought back upstairs, and signed on the spot.
That's amazing.
And there's definitely more of a fear of missing out, right?
Sure.
Because here's the thing with what you were doing, at that moment, Hal Leonard had the book. Right. But now you're taking it away from them. Mm-hmm. And people are much more resistant to having things taken from them.
Sure.
Right. Sure. Same thing with that artist. They were at the label. They were in the office, and they were, potentially, possibly on the market to sign and this and that. But when you pull that away, suddenly that desire, no. We don't want someone else taking this, yeah.
It instantly gives them a fresh perspective.
Yeah, and it calls them to action very quickly.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so then they produced the book and published it, and it was out and it was successful, and then they came to you for the DVD. And this is the story that I think is fantastic.
Yeah. So writing a book is one thing, because it's a lot easier to write down information than it is to actively physically produce it. And so sure, I can write down a lot of really interesting, challenging drum exercises, but to actually play them on video, then that's a whole different self-perception that you get into of like, oh, how well can I do this, right? And so they basically came after the success of that book. They wanted me to record an educational DVD to kind of continue the momentum of the success of that book. And And when they first offered it to me, they said, we'd like to do this. My instant response, my instinctive response was no. No, I'm not qualified to do that. Because the thing is, I think we focus so much more on the stuff we can't play than what we can play. And especially at that time, that was my focus. I was, whenever I practiced, I didn't care about the things I could play. I was focusing on things I can play. And I need to work on this stuff to be able to play it. And so, which is a very skewed and unhealthy perception, by the way. And I think it's something that I think it would serve all of us to really think about and acknowledge and start putting more of an effort to focus on the good things that we can contribute and be able to play and create, rather than the stuff we can't. But anyway, so my instinctive response was no. And I was taking lessons from a great drum instructor out here, this rudimental drumming champion. His name was Rob Carson. Really, my lessons with him were great. Most of the time we were just talking, and a lot of times we didn't even really play at all, but just he had really good insights and wisdom, just had a really interesting perspective on life. And so as we were walking out at the end of my lesson, I remember vividly walking out to my truck, and I told him, I said, yeah, well, Hal Leonard wanted me to shoot a video for this. And he goes, oh, that's fantastic. And I said, yeah, well, I told him no. And he goes, what? Like, it blew his mind. I said, man, I'm just not ready for this, but maybe like in a year, if I practice some more of this stuff, then I'll be qualified. Then I'll be ready for it. Right. Just give me a year. And he goes, well, Jeff, first of all, you're never going to be ready. So you have to do it. You're never going to be ready. You're never going to be fully ready in your mind. And he goes, and if you don't take advantage of this opportunity, it's just going to go to someone else that feels like they are ready. And he says, it's a mindset. And that quick phrase right there made such an impact on me. And it just really gave me a fresh perspective that I was like, wow. And once again, kind of fear of missing out. If I don't take advantage of this opportunity, it's going to go, it will go to someone else, right? Because they have a budget to produce these educational videos, a limited budget. And if I don't take advantage of it, well, they're going to give it to somebody else that does want to take advantage of it and has the confidence to be able to play that stuff. So I really had to reevaluate what I can deliver and focus on the things that I can deliver as opposed to the things that I can't. No one knows the things you can't play but you, right? But yet we focus on that all the time. Right. And that's the problem. Most of the time we get so stuck in our heads that the only thing we think about is just us. It's like, but no one else knows our capabilities fully. Only we do. And I think that's kind of the genius of what a lot of amazing artists do, is that they don't focus on the things that they can't. They don't focus necessarily on their weaknesses. They focus on their strengths. You know, and you see where they're at with that. Even I think Steve Vai, great guitar player. I remember him. You could see this on like a Guitar Center video on YouTube. It's like he's Guitar Center doing some sort of thing, and he infamously says, "I don't focus on my weaknesses. I focus on my strengths. I practice my strengths." He goes, I'm not a great jazz player. I like to play a little bit of blues, but those aren't my strengths. Steve Vai isn't known for being a great jazz player. No one wants to listen to him play jazz, right? They want to hear him play him. They want to hear him be him. And that's why he's one of the greatest guitar players. And I think that's what most artists ultimately decide to do. And that's why they become, the great artists that they are, that we know and love.
Well, I think, there are, the way that I've always looked at things, there are really three keys that are going to allow you to become successful. Obviously, it's going to start at your skill set, right? You have to be able to come to the table with the goods, But the reality is a lot of times that skill set is at a much lower level than what we perceive it needs to be at.
Yeah, right.
Especially as I've played on many sessions. You've played with many different artists, and you're saying like, I didn't feel like I was capable of doing this. But prior to that, you had a very long career playing and touring with a lot of different artists. So your capabilities were far higher than what they needed to be to actually make a career as a musician, right? Sure. And it's the same thing, even going in and playing sessions, we focus and think, I can't do this, I can't do this. But 99% of the time, I don't have to go in there and do some crazy fast sweep picking lick, with all this crazy technique. You're just playing chords and you're playing a simple melody and you're getting sounds and you're complementing the song. So when you focus on what you're good at, that's when you're able to, I think, really draw a lot of opportunities to yourself, because a lot of times you can be very clear about what you can do, and you can put yourself in those situations that you know you can succeed in.
Right. Absolutely. That's totally it. Yeah. It's just developing that mindset, getting out of your head.
Right. So aside from developing, the skill set, which you work at a lot, you practice a lot, and I actually think that's a great question in of itself. How do you continuously develop your skill set and constantly provide value to the people who you end up getting employed by, whether it be different artists or how are you constantly developing it as a musician?
Well, I think there's two parts to that. I think, especially when you say, how do you add value to the artists that are hiring you? That's a two-part. Those are two sides of the same coin, really. It's okay. You have to bring in the musical capability, and you have to bring in a humble personality, right? You have to bring in a quality as a musician and quality within your character as a person, and then those are the two reasons why somebody hires you. First, they probably know of you, or if they don't know of you, hopefully they know your reputation, and if that reputation is preceded with, he's not only a good musician, but he's a great guy and he's responsible, and people want to be around him, then you're positioning yourself pretty well into getting some work, right? So in terms of being a musician or developing your skill set, there's kind of what I just said. I know so many things that I'm terrible at and I need a lot of work on. And so that journey's never going to end. Right. It's just like, there's always something that I can improve. Even the things that I guess I'm kind of known for, those can still get better. Right. It's not necessarily always about quantity. It's really about quality. And so it's not learning something new. It's making what you already know better. Right. And I don't think there's ever an end to that. I don't think you can ever just say, I can't play that any better. Like, really? I think there's always a little percentage that you can always make a little bit better. And so now I think a lot of it's just kind of refining. Of course, I'm trying to learn new ideas and new techniques, and but most of the time I'm getting called for what I've been known for, I guess, in my career. And so I want to make that as good as possible, so that when people call me, I want to deliver that to the highest level possible. Mm-hmm. And so that's, like I said, that's ongoing. But then on the character side, on the other side of that coin, it's just learning just to shed the ego and just be humble and just kind of be a little bit more empathetic and just kind of understand that I may not always have the right answers, and other people can add a lot of value to my life when they critique in something that I'm doing or something I'm saying or some sort of behavior or some sort of attitude that I have in my life that isn't conducive to a healthy environment with people, into a community. And especially when you're on the road, right, it just takes one bad attitude to ruin the experience for everyone. And so it's really imperative that you take everyone into account of how your attitude is going to influence people, whether you realize it or not. Your demeanor, you don't have to say anything. Your demeanor is going to affect the value or the well-being of someone else's life, especially when you're in such close proximity, being on the road, being on like a bus or a van or wherever you're around the same people day in and day out. And you just have to really respect that. And if somebody's doing something annoying, that you just can't stand, okay, well, stop being annoyed, right? It's not necessarily their fault, right? Yeah. It's your fault for being annoyed, right? So you got to take a little bit of ownership with the things that you're choosing to be annoyed with, right? It's like, okay, something's always going to bother you. Nothing's ever going to go perfectly the way you want, but you got to deal with that. That's not necessarily other people's problems. That's your problem by choosing to be annoyed by that. And that's hard, man, because that's your ego, and you got to shed that ego of like, I want it this way, my way's the right way, and all this other stuff. And nobody wants to be around people like that.
Yeah, that's a surefire way to end the gig, to lose the gig quickly.
Totally, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and it create a reputation that's going to end your career. you know?
Right. Well, taking it another step further, even I know in the last number of years, you've definitely adjusted to, really just even what's going on with technology and stuff like that. Years ago, you had nothing to do with recording. You had nothing to do with, setting, I remember talking to you, years ago, and you're like, well, if I'm going to record, I'm going to go to a studio and I'm going to work with an engineer and they're going to make it sound good. And now, now you have your own studio and your stuff sounds great. Your recordings sound great. And you've diversified, aside from just being a drummer, into learning how to record your drums and learning how to make your drums sound great, so that when someone hires you, when you send them your tracks, they sound fantastic.
Yeah. What's the old axiom? If you're not riding the wave of change, you'll find yourself beneath it, right?
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Which is true, because we live in this digital world or virtual world where, everyone kind of expects you to be able to deliver drum tracks online, guitars online, based on the vocal. It's just like everything's online now. We live in this online world. The whole world's flat now. So it's like everyone's accessible. And so everyone should be able to deliver what people's expectations are. So yeah, it was really just by, I don't consider myself a tech guy at all, but it was one of those things that I'm like, if I want to continue to have a career, not only to be accessible to other people, but also just to advance my own projects as well. And to be able to compete in that arena, as independent artists, as a drummer, right? I mean, I get hired to play, but if I want to create my own albums, which I've done before, I don't have the money to spend on a studio for 2 weeks, being really particular about my drum tracks that I want to lay down. It's like, no, I need to buy the gear and spend as much time as I want in the comfort of my own studio to be able to get the product that I want. And so learning the technology and developing that new skill set is imperative. There's no way around that. You'll get left behind. I mean, I can't imagine if I didn't have that studio. I've had that studio for about 6 years now, 7 years, 5, 6, 7. And man, especially now with the COVID thing. Yeah. I mean, I've done a bunch of tracks, drum tracks for other people, just because obviously we can't be in the same room and all that other nonsense. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's been a real help.
So we've talked a lot about, like success strategies and mindset. So if we stay on mindset, what are some of the strategies that, because every musician, we have ups and downs, and really the music industry is full of a lot of rejection. What are some of the strategies and mindsets that you've utilized that have helped you get through the down periods, the periods of rejection, when you're wanting to get a gig and for whatever reason it doesn't happen for you, it happens to the guy next door. What are the mindsets and the strategies that you've implemented to get past those and move on to the next big thing?
There's always something good that's going to come out of something that is negative. You can always find some sort of good that is going to come out of something of some sort of disappointment. Once again, I'm going to be quoting cheesy phrases all day today, but that which doesn't kill you only makes you stronger is, it's a reason why it's a cliche, is because it's true. That's, if you take that mindset of just saying, okay, I had this expectation, it didn't work out the way I wanted. You have a choice to do two things. One, you can let it defeat you, and you can let it bum you out, and you can let it rob you of any chance of growth, or you can look at it as, what did you learn, as a teaching opportunity? What valuable lesson did you learn from that? And that's really it. You have a choice with every outcome that there is, with every sort of expectation that you have. How do you choose to respond to whatever the outcome, whether it's positive or negative? You choose how you react to that. And that's it. Once again, you just take ownership of that. And it's surprisingly easy, though, I think, to see the good in those disappointing times, because it's like, sure, you didn't get a gig that you were hoping for. Well, you know what? Now you got more time to get better. You got more time to focus on other projects. You got more time to add value to other people's lives in ways that you may have not thought of before, right? there's endless ways that you can look at that as like, okay, I didn't get that, I was expecting to get that, but how can I use my energies now to be used even better than if I did get that gig?
Yeah.
That's an awesome challenge to put upon yourself.
Yeah, it all comes down to that internal dialogue that we have with ourselves. We can choose to say one thing and go down a dark path. We can say another thing and go down a good path that's going to lead to more and more opportunities.
Yeah.
So, I know growing up, you and I grew up listening to a lot of the same music. I knew that, 15-year-old Michael had a specific viewpoint of what making it meant, right? I knew what success meant to me when I was 15, looking at a future career as a musician, right? I look back on that now and I have to laugh, 30 years later. But my question to you is, you've had a long career, I've known you 20 years. So, you've had roughly 20 years. We've basically had we've been in the business the same amount of time, as full-time musicians. Now, when you look at success, when you look at your career and when you look at other musicians, a lot of musicians who are very successful musicians aren't necessarily the people who are on the cover of magazines. When you look at success and having a career as a musician, what does success look like to you? How do you actually define it? When people say like, well, I hope you make it, and you go, well, I kind of already have. What does that already look like to you?
Yeah, the older I get, the easier it is to define success. And it's really the amount of value that you can add to other people's lives. I mean, that's really what it is. It's just like the more you can positively affect other people and add quality value to inspire them to be the best that they can be through whatever art that you create, whether through performance or education, that's the success right there. I mean, anytime I get any sort of email or comments about somebody that I don't know, from around the world, and she says, you've inspired me throughout years, I've been following you through years, and you're just like, what? Really? And I started playing this, and they'll send me videos, and you're just like that. There's nothing better than that. Yeah. When you're able to give and you see that person's life has a specific value that you were responsible for, come on, that's success right there.
I agree with you, because when I look back now and I think of, as you get older, you can define a lot more around what you used to see. When I was 15 years old, I thought, well, if I'm, touring and I'm in a band and I have a record deal, then that's success, right? But then when you really dive into that, you realize, well, in order to have all those things, the music that I created had to speak to a lot of people. Right? It had to have spoken to a lot of people to actually get them to come out to the shows, which would allow the touring to happen, so that I could get up on stage and perform, and again, provide value and speak to people in some way. So when you really dissect, and make a change in their life. So when you really dissect what that initial dream was of what making it meant, you can really get down to pulling it apart and go, yeah, it really meant providing value to people. Yeah. Helping, influencing people in some positive way. Because if we weren't influencing people in some positive way musically, we wouldn't be able to have a career.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the heart of it right there.
Hey guys, I just wanted to pause for a second and let you know that if any of your goals over the next year include recording and releasing a new record, generating placements of your songs on TV shows, films, and commercials, building a fan base that will sustain your career, or really just transitioning into full-time music, I want to invite you to my special workshop, Real Musicians Don't Starve. Now, this is an entirely free workshop, and in it, we're going to focus on the 3 keys to your success. You're going to learn an extremely powerful strategy that allows you to create your own wow factor. This wow factor allows you to attract opportunities to both you and your music, as well as remove any financial worry that you're going to have pursuing a career as a full-time musician. You can check out this workshop for free at realmusiciansdon'tstarve.com/workshop. Now back to the interview with Jeff. So I have two more questions for you. The first one is actually I'm going to give you this is a two-part question. What is the best career decision you've made, and what is the worst career decision you've made?
Wow, on the spot.
Yeah, I know that totally out of the blue.
The best decision I made. Yeah, okay, that's easy. I met you when we were living in Nashville, and I was playing with a lot of contemporary Christian artists at the time, CCM artists. Rebecca St. James was the main artist I played with. She was awesome. I played with her for about 2.5 years out there, and it was a great gig. I remember I was getting paid well, and I was touring all over the world, and the people I was with were really cool. And so it was great. But I remember sitting on the couch of my bass player's house right before bus call one night, and I thought that. I went down that checklist. I went, wow, I have a good gig. I get to tour. I got a good group of friends here. Life is really comfortable for me. And that scared the heck out of me. It scared the heck out of me because it was too comfortable. And I knew that if I stayed, I could stay in Nashville doing that same thing for the next 10 years, hopefully, and I would totally regret it because I knew living in Nashville and doing those gigs, I wouldn't be able to really see what I'm fully capable of doing as a musician and an educator, because I knew I wanted to move back to LA, and LA had the artists that I wanted to play with, those guitar players. I was always a fan of guitar-based music, and I wanted to play with those guys. And that was the music I ultimately wanted to play because I thought it would be challenging and fulfilling. And then I wanted to teach at Musicians Institute because I loved education, and that would be a good platform for me to do that. And I knew if I didn't leave Nashville at that time, I would have missed out on those opportunities. So I'm thankful I did. I moved back to LA in 2003, and it was hard. And for, first year or so, because I was like, did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? I had a pretty good career in Nashville, and now I'm basically starting over in LA in one of the biggest music communities in the world. Not smart, Jeff, but it actually was. So recognizing the comfort of the comfort of complacency, I guess, is what or of compromise is. Well,
that's good. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I think that was really valuable, and I'm thankful that I had the wisdom from God to show me that that's not the path that He wanted me on. So ultimately, for the rest of my life. So that would be that for the worst decision. I did a tour. I'm not going to say the name of the artist, but I did a tour a few years ago. That was the worst experience of my life. And I knew going into it that it was going to be rough. And, but for some reason, I don't know why I just agreed to do it. And I should have listened to my gut and said, this is not a good thing. And that tour aged me. Literally. I kid you not. I had a little bit of gray hair at the beginning of that tour. That tour was only like a month or 5 weeks long. When I came back, I had a lot more gray hair. I kid you not. So that was probably one of the worst decisions.
Yeah. I do remember that tour.
Yeah. I think you got many phone calls on the road.
I got many phone calls during that time. Yeah. Jeff and I go back 20 years. So I specifically remember that one. Yeah. So one more question for you. Okay. Then I want you to share a little bit about Drum Discipline Academy. But sure. If you could go back in time, all right, and talk to we'll say 20-year-old Jeff, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Early 20s, late teens, early 20s. If you could go back in time, sit down at a diner, look across the table to yourself, 20 years old, and have a conversation. What are two things that you would advise to do differently, neither of which could be related to the tour that you took? What are two like long-term career pieces of advice that you would give yourself that you wish you knew at 20?
The first one that comes to mind is don't I know it sounds cliched again, but really, don't compare yourself to others. And it's like, of course, we all know that. But really, it's a toxic, no-win situation when you compare yourself to others. Right. Because you will never be them, and they will never be you. You can only be the best version of you that there is. You can't be anything else. And so to waste your energy and emotional energy on measuring yourself to someone else is a complete waste of time. Now, that's not to say you can't use what other people do to motivate and inspire you. Of course, that's awesome. We should all do that. But to put the unnecessary pressure on yourself to feel like if you don't play as equal or better, whatever that means, than someone else, then you're not valuable. Utter nonsense, right? It's a waste of time that's never going to come to fruition, and you're going to be chasing your tail the whole time, and it'll be disappointing after years of realizing. Once you come to that realization that you can't do it, you just have to be the best version of yourself. That's it. Mm-hmm. The second thing would be don't be so serious. I have a tendency to be a little aggressive, like a little more aggressive about certain things that I should be a little bit more lighthearted about, I think. And so I think the older I get, the more I realize that maybe I put a little bit too much stress or pressure and got too tense about things that I shouldn't have. I should just let them be, because, life is awesome. And this journey that we're all on is an awesome gift that we're able to create. And I mean, I get to hit things for a living, hit inanimate objects for a living. And I mean, that's pretty awesome. I think you told me one time I think it was maybe some pastor used an analogy. He said that some people woke up this morning and they went to a factory and they were making doors. They had to
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. I totally remember this now. Yeah.
That has stuck with me through years. And it's like, when you realize the gift of being able to play music and create music, whether part-time or full-time or whatever, it's a true gift to be able to express yourself in this kind of artistic medium, and it's capable of inspiring and adding value to other people. That is absolutely incredible. And I don't think I gave that enough credit in my earlier years of like how valuable that is and how important it is. So I think that would settle down 20-year-old Jeff.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the other thing too is in our earlier years, we were so focused on achieving the goal. Yeah. Right. We had this goal that it's almost like this rush, and I think it's just natural when you're younger. You want to get there quick. Yeah. So you're on this mission, and if and I know that I looked at my career for a long time with blinders. I didn't see the stuff that was on the side. That I look back now and I think, oh man, I really wish I took those blinders off and I enjoyed the view on the side a little bit. Yeah. I had a guy, a friend of mine for years, would always say, Michael, it's the journey, not the destination. And I was like, what does that mean? Come on. Right. Right. I mean, the destination's going to be awesome. And then in hindsight, I look back and I think, man, I really worked really hard for a long time, but I had some heavy blinders on that I didn't really enjoy some of the journey. I think that to me is one of those things that I wish I could go back and say, man, enjoy that journey along the way. There's a lot of really cool views off to the side. Yep.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And it's hard to realize that when you're young. Yeah. I think that unfortunately comes with age. What is it? Who said it? It's that youth is wasted on the young. Yeah. It's like, there's a certain, because I think there's a certain different type of wisdom you gain when you get older, but hey, that's what life is, and so hopefully we can pass that on.
I think at the same point, though, in order to really achieve a certain level of success in such a highly competitive industry that is, full of a lot of rejection, there's an element where you do have to have the blinders on, I think, through a certain period of your life when you can be so susceptible to the rejection. I mean, now someone turns me down, they don't like my song, I couldn't give a crap, right. But at 22 years old, someone turned me down, they didn't like my song, it's devastating. Yeah.
Right.
So there's a certain, and a lot of that just has to do with, developing your confidence and even just understanding the business.
Yeah.
And how the business works. So I think that those are things that you could go back and, I think of what would I say if I was 20 years old and I was sitting across the table from myself. And I think a lot of the things that I would say would still fall on deaf ears.
Yeah. That's the problem. That's it. Yeah. That's the problem with just being young, is that you don't have the experience to acknowledge the reality of those words. Yeah. Right? You're living in this hyper aggressive, like, I have to rule, I have to be the best, no one can reject me. It's like, it's all systems go right now. And it's okay. I mean, in an ideal situation, that's the case, but that's not how the world works, especially the music world. So.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that if I would go back and talk to myself, I would tell myself to learn the business side of it at a much younger age than I did. Understand the concepts of publishing, song ownership, copyright, and understand those concepts. I think that would have helped tremendously through my 20s.
Yeah.
Especially when, I started having dialogue with other professional musicians and publishers. And as I got into it, different engineers and whatnot, having had that type of background, I think would have opened up a lot more doors quicker.
Sure.
But let's talk about, I know that you've been using the quarantine to do much good. You've got Drum Discipline Academy, and I'd love for you to explain a bit about what Drum Discipline Academy is. And I just think this is awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Drum Discipline Academy has been a passion. It's something I've been wanting to do for years. And this year I've finally, I've always wanted to have an online educational resource. I've been in drumming education for well over 20 years now. And now I just want to offer something from myself, not something that's through a third party, like a publisher or anything like that. And I just want to take more ownership with it. So I can really create the content that I want. Sometimes if you're working with a publisher, they have editors and they have very specific things of parameters that you need to kind of abide by. And as artists, we don't like that. We don't like boundaries, right? We want to be our own. So even as educators. So Drum Discipline Academy is my educational drumming website that I started a few months ago. You can go right now and download a free 3-lesson course that's pretty exhaustive, has PDFs, has videos that correspond with everything. And throughout the quarantine, I've been finishing up this 8-week boot camp. It's called the Drum Discipline Boot Camp. And I'm going to be offering that this summer, July or August. And it's basically an 8-week course that really deals with the fundamentals of rhythm and coordination. And one of the biggest things as drummers is, and obviously with any musician, is that we have to play with confidence, right? Mm-hmm. And drummers, especially, if drummers don't play with confidence, the whole band gets real nervous real quick. Mm-hmm. And this is what I deal with my students all the time, is that we always talk about confidence, but they're like, how do you develop confidence, or how do you sound confident? And confidence comes from being able to play something consistently. Whether you're confident or not, you should still be able to play something consistently. And if you have a strong foundation of, or a strong understanding of the foundations, of basic techniques, of basic rhythm, of basic coordination, you will be able to play that convincingly, whether you're scared out of your pants or not. And so this whole boot camp is designed to hit these fundamental concepts from multiple different angles, so you don't get bored, because variety is the spice of life. Obviously, you need it. Muscle confusion is a very valuable thing. So it's taking fundamental ideas, but hitting them at multiple different angles and directions and perceptions, and developing that so you can have the strongest bass possible, so that you can sound as confident as you can in any musical situation. And it takes 8 weeks to do that. And so I'm finishing that up right now, and I'm super excited to offer that here in a few months. And it's going to be a good thing. I'm really, really excited. It's, out of all the educational stuff I've ever created, this is hands down, I think, the most effective and valuable offering that I've ever been able to produce. So I'm pretty excited about it.
And you also have on jeffbowders.com, you also have some downloads of your albums available, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could go to jeffbowders.com. Yeah. I released my second album last year, I think. And you can download that album for free. You could go to jeffbowders.com and download that album. It's instrumental, guitar based, over self-indulgent drumming music. And which who doesn't love that? I mean, come on. So if you're into that niche of music, that's you'll love it.
Yeah, if you like a lot of odd time signature, crazy. Yeah, it's not only just drumming, but it's every instrument. Yeah. Every instrument on those records it's absolute insanity. But they're musical, which is nice. They're musical records, but lots of odd time signatures. Very very progressive. They are musicians' albums.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I
still we're contributing to those albums as well.
I still look back fondly on both those records as they were the hardest records I've ever been a part of, writing or playing anything on, because man, it's insanity, but it's a lot of fun, and
I take so much pride in that. That's awesome.
Well, Jeff, thanks for coming and sharing your wisdom, and the focus here is I really want everyone to realize that there is a lot of opportunity out there for musicians. Like what you said earlier when we started, just because you're a musician doesn't mean you have to be a starving artist. That really is just something that I think that's what people who have the scarcity mindset, and who live really based in a mindset of fear, will say over and over and over and over, I'm a starving artist. Well, if you say you're a starving artist, you're going to be a starving artist. But the reality is that real musicians don't starve, because we figure out a way to add value and bring a lot of value to our end users. And I'd love to end with our manifesto, which is that real musicians are business owners, and our business is music. A business is simply an organization where value is provided in order to make a profit. And unlike starving musicians who operate with a mindset of scarcity and fear, as success-driven musicians, we operate with a mindset of abundance, confidence, and service. We are doers, we are dreamers, we are creators, and we are achievers. We know that our true value is determined by how many people we serve and how well we serve them, because our truth is real musicians don't starve.
I love it. That's awesome. Right on.
It's just the truth. It's the truth.
Very cool. Yeah. You choose what you want.
Yeah. Awesome, Jeff. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you soon.